Welcome back to the Growth Hacking Culture podcast. Let's be honest. How many times have you heard a corporate leader talk about the importance of innovation, only to see absolutely nothing change? Innovation has become a buzzword thrown around in boardrooms and strategy meetings, but often lacking any real substance. It is like everyone agrees it is super important, yet most companies struggle to actually do it. A McKinsey report found that while there is 84% of executives that say that innovation is crucial for their growth, only 6% are satisfied with their innovation performance. Think about it. 84% know it is essential, but only 6% are actually good at it. That's a massive gap. And it points out to a fundamental problem. We are not just lacking good ideas, we are lacking a system for executing them. And that's precisely what we are going to talk today. My guest, Marcelo Calbucci, isn't just another talking head spouting platitudes about innovation. He's a battle tested entrepreneur, innovator, and technologist who's been in the trenches of companies like Microsoft and Amazon, and who has founded several startups of his own. He's seen what works, and more importantly, what doesn't work when it comes to fostering a culture of innovation. He's going to pull back the curtain on a powerful framework, the PRFAQ, press release and frequently asked questions, which is a core part of the Amazon secret for driving innovation. This is a, this isn't some theoretical concept. It is a practical, proven method that can help your organization move beyond just talking about innovation and actually doing it. We're going to get real about the obstacles that stifle innovation with large organizations, from internal politics and bureaucratic red tape to a lack of clear communication and fear of failure. We'll explore the insidious nature of narrative gaps, those disconnects between what leadership thinks is being communicated and what employees actually understand. And we're going to dive into the PRFAQ framework with Marcelo, sharing concrete examples of its successful implementation and walking us through the steps involved. We are going also to discuss about how to overcome resistance to change and build long-term culture of innovation, one that is embedded in the DNA of your organizations. So if you're a leader who is tired of the innovation lip service and ready to see real results, then it's time to buckle up. This episode is for you. Marcelo, welcome to the podcast. It's fantastic to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me, Ivan.
Oh, the pleasure is mine, Marcelo. When I was looking at all the experience that you have caught from directly from big corporations that, of course, started as startup once upon a time, I get really impressed about all the experience that you have gathered. You have also worked in launch startups that have been implemented this methodology, and I think it is time to really dig into this culture side of the innovation and how we can help leaders to reframe their vision to make it happen finally. And I have a question for you, Marcelo. Many corporate leaders struggle to foster a culture of innovation. Uh, I was wondering, what do you see as the biggest obstacles to innovation within these large organizations? Let's think about big pharma companies, FMCG. What is their obstacle?
Yeah, that is true, and it's not only like big pharma or CPG companies, technology companies, and all kinds of companies suffer with innovation, right? Sometimes innovation is too top down, like a CEO and executive tell the team to do something, and that's not really fostering a culture of innovation, right? So I think there is mechanical problems with innovation. Let's begin there. Right. So do people have the time to innovate? Do they have a format that the
Mhm.
company accepts innovation in? Like, do they know how to propose innovation? Do they know what is expected when they're proposing something? Like, a lot of companies, when they try to fix innovation, they try to fix that layer, the mechanical layer. And that's not enough, right? You really need a change in the culture. And the change comes in two forms that I think of. One is you need to get rid of the fear of failure. The second one is you need to get rid of the fear of change. which is a big one as well. Right. So the fear of failure, the way you address that is flipping the script around to talk about failure as lessons learned,
Mm.
right? We have to be careful here. Like, you don't want to fail because of incompetence. You don't want to fail because of negligence. But if you did the best that you could and it didn't work, like, what are the lessons that you're taking away from that experiment that you can apply for the next one? If people are punished, and I don't mean punish as they are fired, but probably like not recognized,
Mm.
for the effort and for the lessons that they learned, they are less likely to try new things. So it's important to do that, right? The second aspect is the fear of change, right? And in companies where you have a fear of change, are companies that don't embrace curiosity, like don't embrace that desire to know more and just see like what would happen if we did it this way or that way, right? How do I learn other ways that other companies are doing or other divisions of my organization are doing, right? So you need to embrace change to a certain extent and make people feel comfortable with like not doing how it always has been done. So I think that's a good starting point. Changing culture is not easy. It takes years, sometimes decades, so don't expect to launch a program in 3 months and start seeing results like 6 months later.
Marcelo, while you were talking, I was thinking back in the days in my corporate life where innovation was something that was on the side of the marketeers only. So these guys, they had the freedom to say whatever the hell they wanted without any validation, by the way, because you have highlighted this keyword that is called experimentation. No, these guys, they just had ideas that came usually when you were in front of
Mm-hmm.
PowerPoint, in front of your computer. There was a lot of ideas, and these ideas were presented to the board without any validation. And it looked to me that it was really narrow. And I don't think that this is culture of innovation. When it's only one department that is accountable to produce ideas, but not accountable with the results, which makes it a little bit weird, right? And that happens
Yes.
in a lot of corporations. Have you observed that too?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, I have a metaphor that I say. It's usually like the marketing team comes up and they throw a document over the fence to the production team or the product team, and the product team like writes what they do and then throw it out over the fence to the next team that's gonna execute and build it, and the team executing builds and sends off to the quality assurance team that's gonna do their work, and then it throws off to the sales team that's gonna try to sell that. Like, that's not good, right? That's a collaboration problem as well. That teams are working in silo. Innovation doesn't work well on that kind of environment. I don't think it works at all on that kind of environment, to be honest.
Exactly. And you have mentioned something that is also quite important. It's about this little thing that we usually put on the last in terms of priority is this control of the fear. Um, and I have seen it very often that because of the usual culture, the application of the usual culture, people are being judged, put aside if you have the wrong idea, or there is, and even worse, when there is no process to help people to validate their ideas. Because yes, we as humans, we believe that we have the best ideas because it came from us and we have all the experience, but we don't have a process to start testing with little
Mm-hmm.
risk in order to de-risk this idea when we are going to present it to the board, so that we have like a process to that is well structured, and you have already proved that there is kind of a what the tech people calls it product market fit for that idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. It's very important to validate assumptions, validate hypotheses. Like, you're not trying to validate the entire new product or the entire new business all at once, right? You want to measure certain aspects of it and then come up with what you think it's a good innovation to address a customer problem.
I must say that I really enjoyed, and thank you very much for sharing with me one of the versions of your book, the PRFAQ framework, because I had the opportunity to see to understand the value, because despite the fact that you have a little bit of a tech background, this book is not for tech people. I felt it like talking to me as a business person, as a leader, or as a culture change architect. I felt that it was talking to me. And one of the topics that you have mentioned um, is about the narrative gaps, and that I found quite impressive. And I wanted to understand, how does a culture of internal presentations and meetings contribute to these narrative gaps, and in fact prevents a good communication? Define also the narrative gaps, because I read the book,
Mhm.
there was a definition, but please share it with the audience.
Yeah, the best way to describe a narrative is a story. And you need to think of a narrative as the business story that you're telling, like why are we building this product? Why are we building this business? Why we are launching this program? So that the story behind it, when it's captured on PowerPoint, it tends to have a lot of gaps on it, right? Like people leave a meeting where someone presented a new idea and they have like 10 slides and full of bullet points and some diagrams. And people might even leave the meeting feeling like, wow, that was so exciting. I understand what we're doing. And they go and they start working on it, and then they realize, oh, but wait a second, what about this, what about that, like I don't know this. And so it leads to lots of other meetings and other realignment and clarification emails and more documents, and people are like, confused, which is not good in general. When you put the narrative in a written format as a document, right, like the PRFAQ framework, for example, which is a 6-page document, it's much harder to have these gaps. Not that you won't have them, but it's much harder because people read differently than they listen, right? When you read, your brain is processing information differently, and you are more likely to see like dissonance between two things on the same document that feels like, wait a second, you're saying we're going to do this, but also we're going to do it this way. Like these two things don't go together. But when you're in a presentation format, like you might even forget one of those things, right, to mention it, and people cannot question it. So writing the narrative in a document helps eliminate most of this problem, which leads to more alignment later on the pipeline.
Hmm. And I like this part where you highlight that it is about writing it, because when we are writing, we wake up the part of our brain that is for made for the cognitive processing, for the analytics, for judging and assessing a situation. And when we are in a presentation, we are more into the emotional mode, because we are going to pay attention to the aesthetics of the presentation,
Yeah.
uh, about the presence of the presenter. And here, what you're saying is that in 6 pages, you are answering to the key important parts of a project, so that when you go to the presentation, you are going to discuss, interact. You have already a background, a setup, and you are not anymore impressed about, hey, Marcelo, did you put a tie or not? Or you had a new haircut, or your slides were done with Gaia online, or
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever. No, no, you are paying attention to the core of to the essence.
Yeah.
Marcelo, and you made me think also about the presentation mode in certain companies. Yes, they pay attention to the aesthetics, so you devote a lot of time to this to aesthetics. And then there is another representation of the fear that people have, where you present 10 slides, but you have 150 slides of backup, because you never know what they're going to ask you. So you have spent
Mm-hmm.
2 3 weeks making the bloody presentation, instead of focusing on the core of the problem, or solving this structure that you mentioned in these 6 pages of FAQ, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're going to spend time creating the presentation, rehearsing it because you want to present in a good way. But the flip side of that as well is the people receiving it, right? So when people are reading a document, they have their own pace to read, so they can control that. When they are listening to a presenter, they can't control the pace, right? So if they miss something, they're gonna interrupt the presenter, or they're gonna leave with that gap in their mind and say like, what about that, right? So documents tend to be better for that kind of exchange of information than presentations.
Beyond we know that part of the secret sauce of Amazon being innovative, and and by the way, for the people who don't know, it's not that they have created just a website or Amazon Web Services or new products, but every second they are bringing little iterations of innovation for everything they do. What I wanted to ask you is that is there other companies using this PRFAQ framework and to in order to drive innovation? Who are they and how do they do it?
Yes, you'd be surprised, but the entire organization uses PRFAQ. So every new business, new product, new program, change to a process or a policy at Amazon starts with a PRFAQ, right?
Mhm.
And these are not the whole thing. Sometimes you only want to change a portion of a program or a feature in a product. Also, often comes with a PRFAQ. So this is embedded into the culture of the organization because we found that using this format, it's really good to validate the merits of an idea and not just opinions of people or assumptions, right? Like you really focus on what's important. Amazon uses it for everything and everywhere. As an executive at Amazon, I was reading maybe one or two PRFAQs a week, right? To decide should we move ahead or should we not move ahead with this proposal. So it was very common framework used within Amazon. And by the way, a lot of times Amazon would write a PRFAQ and the decision was, we're not going to do this. We're not going to launch this business or launch this program or make this change because the document revealed that the risk and the reward or the opportunity, it wasn't right either for the timing or for the prioritization across many initiatives. So this is also valuable. So Amazon does a lot of initiatives that never see the light of day. And that's valuable too, right? Innovation is not only doing things that are successful, but like deciding which things you're not going to do.
Hmm. But wait a second. So if I understand correctly, it can be that there is no presentation. So you have the document and somebody or a group of people decide, no, this is not valid. But there is no moment where there is like kind of a discussion to improve it. Maybe collectively there is a pivot that can be done up to a part of the concept and it can be done jointly. Does it happen?
No, actually, there is a moment, but it's is the document and the meetings. So you're reading the documents and providing feedback to the owner of the document, right? And the owner of the document is taking it back and revising it and grabbing more information or learning about things. Maybe someone asked about, hey, I'm not sure that this piece of technology can do this, right? In one of the review sessions. And so the owner of the document takes a note of that, goes back, does his or her research, and update the document with that information. And if it is not possible, then they need to figure out some other way to achieve that strategy.
Hmm. Is it like a Word document or is it like a system that is organized in 6 pages?
It's a Word document usually.
Good.
Yes,
Simple.
yes.
So no
It is simple.
complication.
Yes. No. Nope. And you have versions on the document. You make updates to the document. You can share the document via email with other people. You can share the meeting. You can print. You can do whatever.
My intuition tells me that, okay, you have mentioned 6 pages, and sometimes 6 pages is a lot of words and it can take time, but I guess that people get used to write it and you don't have to write 6 pages of words. So that means one sentence in this specific box may be enough for people to understand that specific section. Is that correct? It becomes easier with the time to
Yeah,
put it together?
it's actually not that hard to write 6 pages because, and let me jump a little bit here and explain the format of the PRFAQ. The 6 pages have a structure to them, right? So the first page is the press release,
Mm,
which is a hypothetical launch of this product or program or service or this change, right? It's not a press release you're going to send to the press at all. It's just an internal idea that says like, hey, 6 months from now, we're going to do this. And here's the benefit for the customer. Here's the problem that the customer have. Here's a fictional quote from the customer saying like, hey, I had this problem. Now I don't have anymore. So that's the first page of the PRFAQ. The second page is the customer FAQs. So that is like 5 to 8 questions, as if the customer were asking the company, what is this about? Like, how do I use it? How much does it cost? How do I get started? Do I need to bring my own data? So you're answering that. So you're not going to share that with the customers. You're answering that in the present tense, as if the product already existed, right? Because what you're doing is you're helping the team and picture, what this innovation is about. And by the way, this innovation is not only for external customers, sometimes it's for internal customers, right? So you can imagine the IT department writing a PRFAQ of a new policy around laptop use,
Hmm.
right? So they write a press release saying like, we are launching a new laptop use policy today, and explains like why we're doing it, like what problem we're solving and what is the solution. And then on the customer FAQ, they like, the customer in this case is the employee, right? So the customer is like, oh, so can I change my laptop on this situation? And like, there was an answer for that. Can I use the laptop for this situation? There was an answer for that, right? So that's the second page. And the next 4 pages, which is the meat of the PRFAQ, the big part is the internal FAQs, right? So there you talk about the problem, how it's being solved today. Is it a growing problem? Is a problem that's going to go away? You talk about how we're going to solve it. You talk about the strategy. You talk about maybe dependencies that you're going to have, like which teams need to be involved, which organizations, which data we need to acquire, which APIs we might need to use. You go to a certain level of detail, not enough to make it a plan or a roadmap,
Hmm.
right? What you're doing is like you're discussing the merit of doing this. Should we do this or should we not do this? That is the most important question you're trying to get answered from the PRFAQ. And you're trying to answer that from the team that's going to execute this, the stakeholders that are going to be involved on this project. Sometimes it's legal and accounting and finance and marketing and sales. And you also want to get the executives involved on this, right? So the process involves the entire organization, and is very efficient to do that, right?
Hmm.
So one of the biggest benefits of the PRFQ is really there is no buy-in at the end. You don't need to go around and sell the idea and persuade people, because everyone was involved in the creation of it and the definition of it.
Oh, you to me, it sounds a little bit a hybrid between a pitch deck of a startup and the business model canvas, because the first part, value proposition, and the PR, it looks similar. It's almost like we have merged a little bit these two type of documents. And there is a big contrast. I don't know if you're familiar, Marcelo. I remember back in the days in the 2000, a lot of companies were using this famous business case when you were launching an IT project. And
Mm-hmm.
business case was based on the project management methodology. So, and it was minimum 20 pages written by
Yes.
an IT person. And it was about describing features and no discussion about is this worth or not doing.
Yes. Yes. Yes, you said it right. It is a mix between a pitch and the business model canvas, with a lot of emphasis on the outcome. And the outcome has 2 angles to it. Like, is the outcome for the customer? Do customers care about this? Is this a problem worth solving it? Right? Because so many companies like launch products that like no one cares and like no one buys it, no one uses, because they forgot to do that basic step, right? But also the outcome for the company. Like, is it worth for us to do that, right? Is it viable? Like, we have 10 things that we should choose to do. Like, is this the one that we should put at top of the list? So the PRP put a lot of emphasis on vision and strategy, right? So it talks a lot about the why behind something.
That's perfect. That's an amazing tool. Have you seen it working outside of Amazon, in other companies? As it is, they have taken the the bloody Word document template and use that, put it in place. And when they put it in place, they need something else. Do they need to be trained on that, or do they need not only train like how to fill in the boxes,
Mm-hmm.
but train on what type of skills they need. You mentioned a lot of times curiosity, which is bloody difficult to get it from
Yeah.
certain companies. So
Yeah.
what do they need in order to implement it? Who has implemented it outside of Amazon?
Yeah, I'm starting to see even some large companies in tech are starting to use PRFAQ. I see many startups using PRFAQ. If you're familiar with objective and key results (OKRs), PRFAQ is great for that because it's usually what comes before the OKR. If you're being in an OKR meeting, it feels very vague, right? Like people are debating these things vigorously about like, is this the right objective or not the right objective? But what they are missing is like the strategy that connects everything together. Like it's the element that string OKRs with each other and with the vision of the company. So PRFAQ is very effective in that context. So what I've seen happening is startups using the PRFAQ as part of their quarterly planning to drive the definition of the OKRs, right? So the debate is more around the PRFAQ than on the OKR itself. The OKR becomes natural once there is an agreement on the PRFAQ. So I've seen that working. The other example that I can give is I've been using PRFAQ for my personal projects as well.
Uh-huh.
I wrote a PRFAQ. Should I write this book or not? Who is my customer? What problem they are trying to solve? And over the last few months, I wrote several PRFAQs to decide about new opportunities that I should be pursuing, new startups or new projects. It helps me clarify the idea, even though it's just me in isolation in a room doing this. It's still very valuable to me, right? And I can tell you, at least one project recently, I wrote a PRFAQ, and at the end of writing the PRFAQ, I said, "This is the wrong project. I'm not going to pursue it. It's not worth my time." And that's the process working, right? That's the PRFAQ working because it helps you fill the gaps. And once you look at the narrative from top to bottom, you're like, oh, wait a second, that's probably not going to work.
Now, I'm going to ask you a weird question, Marcelo, because can you use the PRFIQ to determine a personal direction? Like as an individual, I want to, I don't know, I want to change jobs. I want to uh, change the industry that I'm working in. Can you use it to determine if a direction, a big change of your personal life could be viable?
You are the first person to ask me this question. So I'm thinking here, can you? I think if you make some modifications, yes, right? Particularly on the FAQ sections, because the FAQ sections right now, the way to write about it is really about the problem, the market, the existing solution, the new solution, the viability, the feasibility. So if you flip those questions around to be more personal questions around value and goals and your mission in life, then probably you could use it. I don't see why
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, it looks something that it could be done. I'm going to look through that optic after this meeting. Um, so obviously, big changes, processes is a big moment of fear and moment of resistance because we are humans. So big change, it means that I'm going to oppose to that change naturally. How can leaders effectively introduce and champion this change within their teams, considering that there is going to be resistance? People are going to oppose. So you are going to tell to a young guy that maybe doesn't have a clue that that exists, or an old guy who has been doing the same for years and years. How can you overcome this resistance? And think about this an advice for this leader who has to deal with that part of the process.
Yeah, I like to think of organization change the same way you think about behavior change, right? I borrow from the behavioral science world to think like, how do people change their behavior? Like how they start going to the gym or eating better or saving more money or like getting rid of bad habits. So I think there is really three components for you to change your behavior and for organizations to change their internal process as well. The number one is really you have to start small,
Hmm.
right? You wouldn't wake up one day and say like, I'm going to run a half marathon today and I never ran before, right? So a mistake that sometimes or some organizations make is like they try to make a change too big all at once
Hmm.
and it fails, right? Because the organization is not prepared for that. So I say like find a project that is somewhat limited in scope and time and try to use the PRFAQ in that context,
Hmm.
right? So there is like less risk for the organization, but there is more momentum for something small to be successful when you're trying. The same way if you're the first time you're gonna go for a run, it's like a 1K. You're just gonna run for 1 kilometer, and like you're more likely to succeed than if you set yourself a goal that is too hard. So that's number one. Number two is really to treat this an experiment, right? And to accept that, we don't know a lot of things. We're
Hmm.
going to go out for a run. We're going to go change and adopt the PRFAQ. We don't know how this is going to turn out. So I think the opposite of that is overselling, right?
Hmm.
And saying like, we're going to adopt this framework and it's going to fix all our problems. And then as soon as it doesn't fix all the problems, people are like, well, this framework doesn't work. So let's stop that, right? And the number three, which ties to number two, is to accept the setbacks, right? So you, Ivan, and everyone else that are professionals, they got really good at something. But if you look back at the beginning of your career, you're probably not that good at
Hmm.
that thing, right? And now you look back and you give yourself a lot of you know um, room to say like, yeah, I made mistakes, but I persisted and I succeeded.
Hmm.
So setbacks in adopting the PRFAQ or any other framework is the same thing. You can't just say like, well, if it doesn't work the first time, we abandon it. You have to try like 2, 3, or 4 times before you even feel like if this is going to work or not, right? So knowing that the first few times is going to be clunky, is going to have problems, might not work at all, is not necessarily a signal that this is not a viable change for the organization.
Hmm. I love this idea that we need to look for small, incremental, consistent behaviors rather than this big intensity. And this is one thing that big corporations are always doing. Let's do a change. Big bang. I don't know why they love this word, Big Bang. What the hell? So, and it doesn't work
Yes.
to do it because there is the natural human psychology that is going to oppose to that big change. And usually it fails. Hmm.
Yes, that's right. Yes. I would avoid that as well. I think the Big Bang thing is a thing of the past. Even product launch nowadays, companies try to be more progressive on how they build and launch new features and add elements to their product. I mean, there are certain products that is much harder, particularly like in pharmaceuticals or car companies or airplanes. But still, there are elements of that you can experiment in small chunks.
Hmm. I was just thinking loud about this problem. So beyond just making individual projects, how can the PRFAQ framework contribute to this long-term culture of innovation within a corporation? You have mentioned already certain elements that about curiosity, certain meta skills that needs to be fostered, like removing this fear of failing and all the stuff.
Hmm.
But how can the framework help you? Is it more than a framework, a philosophy? A little bit like I'm thinking about the Agile Manifesto. And by the way, I saw your
Hmm.
article today about agility, how it is being not used enough in the US, mentioned enough, researched enough in the USA versus the rest of the world. But anyways, is it like a philosophical principle that can be used beyond just making a project happen?
Yeah, so there is no magic bullet, right, to make this adoption or this change to the organization culture to embrace more innovation. And the PRFAQ is just one tool, right? Like you need to really think broadly about this. I think it is a tool worth starting with because as you start experiment, you're slowly going to start to see some success. Maybe not after the first one, maybe after the third one. And success is contagious, right? If there is one side of the organization that feel like, wait a second, they are doing this way now, and it's starting to work, maybe we should look at that as well, right? So allow for the organic growth of the adoption of any framework, particularly the PRFAQ framework. So it becomes less of an imposition. There is a turning point in the organization that you have enough divisions, teams, or departments or sub-organizations using it and working that you might want to make a top-down mandate about it, right? Because you're always going to have the laggards and the teams that are like, oh, we don't want to adopt new things, and this might be require a little bit more effort from the senior leadership. But in the beginning, you do want that organic adoption of um, the framework. And it's not only from team to team, it's also from project to project, like starting from a small project to a medium project to a bigger project. Let it grow naturally so people feel comfortable with it and know how to use it.
Hmm. Do you have any piece of advice? Like there is these leaders who are a little bit scared about doing the first step in order to create a more innovative and agile work culture. And I guess, of course, Marcelo, let's be sincere. Your book, the PRFAQ framework, it is what I like about the book is that it's a mix of easy to read. It's something that you can read in a plane in a couple of hours, but at the same time you can refer back because you have exactly like do this, do that, eh, like a process in order to go and implement it. So the first step, of course, is going to be if you want to launch an innovative and agile culture, buy the book because it's going to be understandable by any leader. But what could be other advices that you could provide to these leaders who wants to start?
Yeah, so I wrote the book for innovators, and I define the word innovator very broadly, basically meaning any person, right? Because any person can innovate, actually. And like I said, you can read the book top to bottom, and you can use it as a reference. That was an intentional decision that I made. And the book worked for the founder, like that is deciding if he should start a startup or not, or she should launch a new product or not. But it also for big organizations that have like multiple product, multiple teams, multiple programs. What I would say is if you're a leader and you think you need more innovation, I guarantee there is one person on your team right now that would be eager to try this, right? And starting experiment. So find that person and give them like this tool, that's going to help them get started and get going instead of like telling a team to go do something, right? And let this person be the champion or multiple people be the champion of this to give it a try.
I like this idea to pick somebody who is willing to go and implement a catalyst, somebody who is able to ignite this, how do you call it? Like multiple sparks around the organization in order to make it happen. But it starts with one, and there is nothing to lose by trying with one person. Marcelo, um, how do people goes and gets to know a little bit more about the PRFIQ framework or contact you to have a chit chat about struggles in innovation in an organization? How they can reach you out?
Yeah, absolutely. The website for the book is www.theprfaq.com. Or you can Google or go to Amazon and search for PRFAQ book. It's probably an easy way to find it as well. And it has all my contact information there. I'm very accessible on LinkedIn and email.
That's super good. I'm going to be putting these links. I was just taking out the Amazon link directly, your website, the prfaq.com website. That would be amazing. Marcelo, it was really, really nice to speak to you. This is the type of conversations that I love because it allows me to generate ideas also for
Mhm.
myself. Thank you very much, Marcelo. It was lovely to have you today.
Yeah, I had a great time as well. I love the direction this conversation took. Thank you so much, Ivan.
Thanks, Marcelo. Have a great day.
All right, take care.